Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. What is it like to become a pilot in midlife? The challenges are unique, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences. You definitely should not take any advice too seriously from an aviation podcast that uses terms like icing on the vegetables. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello and welcome to episode 194 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we share the experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Joining us tonight, it's my friend who is working remotely tonight. Joining us, he's still in Tennessee, but we'll leave it at that. He is a instrument-rated, commercial-rated pilot of a beautiful Cherokee 180 we like to call Lucy. It's our friend Brian. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Welcome, everybody, from Chattanooga, Tennessee this evening, and glad to be here. We're super excited about our guest, and also Ted.
Yeah, and also Ted. Speaking of that, also Ted, he's our sport pilot extraordinaire living up in the Pacific Northwest in Portlandia. He flies a CTLS we like to call the Egg. He's everybody's friend. Ted, good evening. How are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
And for our folks that are watching on YouTube, they recognize our next special guest. He's a magician. He's an off-Broadway producer. He's a musical theater enthusiast. He's known by his colleagues as November Mike. He's known by his parents as Marcus, but he's known by about 25,000 other people as PropHatCat. Marcus, welcome to the podcast. We're glad you're with us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
Yeah. Got to lower that bar, Marcus. It's, we know you've had a lot of exposure to other podcasts, and we're just glad to have you on ours. We're going to get into what Marcus does, and hopefully our chat, if the folks that are in our chat, if you'll put questions, if you got questions for center controllers, PropHatCat said he's game for anything. He'll tackle them all. Not to put you on the spot or anything, but
maybe we'll see what the questions are.
We'll see what the questions are. But y'all definitely post them in the chat, and we'll get to them as the evening goes on. Do you want to check in, Mr. Siskin? Have you been doing any flying?
So no, I haven't. And listen, this is like a very up vibration show, but I wanted to just mention, because it does have some correlation to some of our listeners, which is we've been dealing with the loss of my mother-in-law this week. And so that's why we're here. And so we are in the midst of all of those things. And so it's been a particularly challenging week, but I just want to say, I've been thinking about it. That's part of being a midlife pilot and being a person in midlife. And I think that we all are working pretty hard to sustain or keep up our parents, or dealing with the loss of our parents and things of that sort of nature in life. And so fitting that into the escape and the transcendent joy of flying is something that we try to do as much as we can, but sometimes the circumstances are just too immediate and it wouldn't be the best idea to fly, or whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to just kind of be real and just say, look, we've been going through it over here, but man, I'm so happy to be here, and this is going to be a fantastic kind of vacation and away from everything that's been going on. And also, you guys have been super helpful to me through all the people that I just started teaching this course that I created, and I had to cancel a bunch of stuff. I'm not a canceller. I love keeping commitments. And so anyway, I just want to say thanks to everybody for all the nice notes and everything. We're just going through it like everybody else does. So anyway, just want to get that out there. So no flying, but some living, right? Some real life stuff.
Very nice. Yeah. And please pass our condolences on to Katie, as we've said in the past. And yeah, this is part of it. You're not in the I'm safe realm of getting up an airplane. You've got too much on your mind, and you need to make sure you could do that at the appropriate time. So
no, can I add one more thing? What an incredible gift that we get to do this, and that we have enough youthful energy to take this on in midlife. And so it really is just an honor to be able to be involved in aviation, much less be alive, much less all these things. So always followed up with gratitude. But anyway, that's all I'm doing for the show, vibe killing, and then we'll carry on now.
Well, I haven't said it in
at least a dozen episodes. I've said it before, but getting in aviation, it's when I realized there's a countable number of summers in my life. And mortality is a thing, and that's okay. This is part of the process. But I think, safe takes on slightly different meaning. It's like sleep is not a yes, no. Stress is not a yes, no. It's like, yeah, of course sleep isn't perfect. Yeah, of course I'm a little stressed. Just come up with where your line is on those things. And, but life is never like, no stress anywhere. It's like, yeah, this is life. So.
I think Marcus just hung up on us. I think he. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you joined us, though, Brian. And it doesn't matter. We'll take any video, any audio. It's good to have the crew together.
Yep,
that's right.
It sure is. It's all about the community. We've got one event that we want to make an announcement on, and then Brian will get at the housekeeping, and then Marcus will start firing away with some questions and just kind of will get more of your background. But I want to let everybody know we have established a non-event event. That's a very midlife way of putting it, Marcus. We have our episode 200 coming up, and we're going to record it live at my home airport, McCollum Field. And for those of you keeping score, that is Romeo Yankee Yankee. It will be Saturday, September 19th. We're going to do the live recording at 4 p.m. There is a conference room in building 900 that's right there on the ramp. We'll probably start gathering around 3 p.m., record at 4 p.m. And then when we're done, there's a really nice restaurant couple of 100 yards away from the conference room, still on the field, called Elevation Chop House. And they've got this upstairs, like they call it a sky bar, I think. And you can watch, you plane spot, do whatever you want, have a drink, and just kind of mingle with your fellow midlife piloters. So put it on your calendar, September 19th from 3 p.m. to whenever it is. So we're really excited about that. And we'll have more details as we get closer to the event. So with that, Mr. Siskind, you want to do the belly strap?
Yeah, and just let me punctuate one more thing about the non-event event. And Marcus, you may not be privy to this, but we have events, and then we have non-event events. And the difference is, if we have an event, we feel responsible for your well-being, and we want you to have fun and be taken care of, and we're going to arrange things. A non-event is, we're just going to do this thing, and we don't care who comes or who doesn't, and we can't provide anything for anybody, but we'd love to see it if you can come through, whatever. So anyway, that's kind of the history of that. And we've had a strange history of these non-events. We did our episode 100 in West Virginia in a remote airport in a hangar that's on the other side of the field in the evening. And people showed up. We were like, oh my gosh. So we had to do some pizza ordering. We've talked about this before. But anyway, I just wanted to give you some context, Marcus, so you didn't think that we were just using strange non sequitur for no reason. There's purpose. There's purpose to this.
We do use strange non sequitur, but there actually is a purpose behind this one. So we like we needed.
Yeah, this episode is basically going to be us apologizing to Marcus the entire time. So all right, housekeeping real quick. You can join our Patreon community and help us keep Midlife Pilot Podcast ad free. Your support makes this show possible. Every membership level gets you access to our incredibly active Discord community. And by the way, a lot of our people get cool points with the young kids that they have, because when they find out that when your son finds out that the dad's on Discord, it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. But it also we're slowly taking the cool out of Discord on a daily basis as you all join. For everything Midlife Pilot Podcast, to support us on Patreon, send feedback, grab some merch, event or non-event info, and more. Just visit. Oh yeah, there's Ted's It's Always Fuel shirt, probably one of our classics. I've been seeing some of the abnormal contact with the ground shirts going out lately. That's pretty good. So, and again, Marcus, we say things that are goofy on the show, and then they become t-shirts. That's kind of how that happens. So you can check out all of our info on midlifepilotpodcast.com. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the air. Hit subscribe or follow on your podcast. That's so you never miss an episode, and it helps other midlifers find us. So that is all. Now let's get to what everybody's here for.
So, November Mike, also known as Marcus and PropHatCat, you are a center controller and route controller. There's a lot of different names. ARTCC, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what the acronym stands for.
Air Route Traffic Control Center.
That's right.
Yep.
I found this interesting because in 2019, I believe, when the government shut down, I went and took pizzas to the Atlanta Center facility. And they kind of greeted me like, "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Like, "We're not sure that you really talk to us." And in fact, I do. We do. There's, when you get outside of the metro Atlanta area, there are quite a few sectors where we're talking to Atlanta Center. But I brought them like 10 pizzas and unbelievably nice people. We had a great time. But I got to sit in on some of their sessions, and
cool.
Was very, very cool. I knew what the center was. I was just going through my instrument training at the time. Unfortunately, I wish I remember all the cool gadgets that they had at that time than after having taken tour of the Tracon. But I do want to start out, and we're just going to have to go at random here. So, and hopefully we'll get some more questions from everybody else. But I want to talk about TMU.
Okay.
And I know that's not you specifically, but
Yeah.
you have knowledge, indirect or direct knowledge with traffic management unit. I believe that's what that
Yep.
stands for,
Mhm.
and flow control.
Mhm.
You are affected by it.
Yep.
And so you probably have inside
Constantly,
baseball knowledge. I know.
consistently. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Can we start out by letting our group know exactly the function of the TMU?
Yeah. But before I do that, I have to do my little disclaimer real quick.
Yes, please, please.
So, hi, I'm Marcus. I'm an air traffic controller, but I don't speak for the FAA or for NATCA. All these opinions are my own. There you are.
Very good.
Check. Yeah, traffic management sucks. No, I'm just kidding.
It does.
I'm
I
kidding.
mean, it does. I think it's the OB version of center control.
Of a center controller? Yeah. We
Maybe.
can't dog on Tracon controllers because, they're actually controllers, but then you have the traffic management people, and we do dog on them pretty constantly.
And for good reason too, though.
Well, they're trying their best. They're trying their best most of the time. And so traffic management in itself is a way to balance system demand with system capacity. There are only so many airplanes that a sector can handle safely, and it's traffic management's job to make sure that those sectors aren't oversaturated. Same thing with airports. So like a big airport, a Core 30 airport will have a traffic management unit at that tower. Then the Tracon providing services to that airport will have a traffic management unit. And then those two traffic management people talk to the overlying center traffic management person. So it's kind of like a big game of telephone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the airport's going to flip, if one of the runway goes down for some reason, then the tower guy calls the Tracon calls the center, and then you manipulate things to lower the rate. Or, the fog blows in San Francisco. Now you can only land one runway, Oh, now we have a 13 rate. Okay, we need 80 miles in trail for all of the airplanes going to San Francisco because that's the only way you can get these planes to land, right? Which is contrary to what airlines want. Airlines want to pack the schedule. They schedule all of their planes to arrive at the same time and all of their planes to depart at the same time, right? Generally. And so it's traffic management's kind of responsibility to say, hey, all the users here, the airport can only land so many people, right? So let's either adjust the schedules, or now you get a flow time, now you get an edict, now you get a whatever, so that you're arriving at the airport and you're not having to do any crazy holding to go in. Where, traffic management unit stuff is relatively new in the course of aviation, just in the past 20, 25 years. Used to, they just launch airplanes and you'd hold for 45 minutes before you could land, So they're really trying to limit the amount of airborne holding because of saturation, if they can help it, right? And so you have the tower, you have the Tracon, you have the center traffic management people, and then you have what's called the Air Traffic Control System Command Center, the ATCSCC. That's in Virginia. That's kind of like the brain of the National Airspace System, right? So all the center traffic management people report to the air traffic control system command center. And the command center is the one that's making the routes for the day. They're the playbook people. I don't know if you see my little thing I post every day. I try and post the National Airspace Ops Plan to say, hey, this is what you can expect today. These are the airports that are going to be short-staffed. These are the playbook routes that are going to be into effect. The command center is the one that is publishing that. And the command center is the one that is taking input from the center sector or the center TMUs and devising this plan to help move the massive airplanes from one port of the country to the other, right? It's a give and take. And the command center is more like fixing things with a cleaver. And then you get to the center, and then the center is now starting to like fine tune, shave off the fat. And then you get to the TRACON and you shave off a little bit more, and the tower shave off a little bit more, right? But the command center is just basically saying, okay, everybody on the East Coast can't go north. They have to go south. Okay, so here's the playbooks to go south. Playbooks being predefined routes between airport pairs that can be sent to a plane relatively quickly, as opposed to these individual controller coming up with those routings, right? Because a controller can come up with a route for 2, 3, 4 airplanes, sure. But whenever you start talking about a whole departure bank out of Dulles or a whole departure bank out of JFK, that's too much for any one controller to do. So the command center will then say, hey, airlines, can you start filing this playbook? And then their dispatchers are going to be responsible for doing that. Or the clearance delivery people at the tower, they're not having to come up with those routes. Those routes are just kind of adapted to them go. The thing with the routes, though, and where the controllers get frustrated sometimes, is the routes worked one time on this one day that didn't have weather on this route. That's the general idea. Playbook, right? The controller will then get a route, and the route sends the airplane right through the weather. That the playbook is supposed to be avoiding, but it's putting them right through the weather. And so the controller is like, why are we doing this? This is dumb. And then you give it to the pilot and they're like, why are we doing this? This is dumb.
Right.
We're going right through the thunderstorms. So then that's where the little finite knife, carving the big hunk of meat that the command center gave us to be like, okay, we can adapt those playbooks to fit this, because yes, we're not going to send you through thunderstorms. That is bad, right? But we at least have people on somewhat of a route to give us a fighting chance, as opposed to just, having to get every single person a new routing, right?
Right.
So you mentioned edicts a minute ago, and that's something that as a private pilot and as a low hour pilot, you don't get necessarily exposure to things like that, and that kind of becomes more a part of people's awareness when you're perhaps an instrument pilot. But I don't think that's bad for people that are lower hour pilots to understand what edicts is and how to access that information. And I was curious also about in terms of the governance and the curation of that information and how that's collected and disseminated, if that falls into the sort of neurological center that you were talking about or otherwise. But maybe just walk a private pilot or maybe a person that's even a student pilot through this idea of what edicts is and what that how that can be valuable for anybody.
Yeah. This is very, very broad. This is very, very overview. Like, I can go into the minutia about this, and believe me, I've, and if you, pilots like to talk about being a pilot. Controllers sometimes like to talk about being controllers. Traffic management people love talking about traffic because they feel, they love talking about it, and they'll talk your ear off. But long and short of it, an edict is given to a plane whenever generally your destination airport is over their arrival capacity. So think of going into Houston. We normally have like a 108 rate. Whenever runway 927 was closed for refurbishment, that now means we can only land 2 runways as opposed to 3. So now we're at like an 80 rate, right? The airlines will still schedule 108 planes to arrive in that hour. So you got 25 airplanes that you have to delay to the next hour, because hopefully there isn't as much volume in that next hour. So you can delay them in the air with a hold. You can delay them on the ground with an edict. And the edict
by the way, I don't mean to interrupt you, by the way, but I just want to say, does American 2482 count as one plane or 2?
Ugh.
Is that how you squeeze some people in there? Is that how
Yeah,
you
I think America
That's
was trying to get around an edict or something.
or
Yeah.
2432, whatever it was? But yeah, sorry, go ahead. You were just
Yeah.
getting to the meat, and I interrupted you. But carry on.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, in order to push you into that next hour chunk, right, you get an edict to say, okay, you get a 30-minute delay or you get a 45-minute delay, depending on how far away you are from that main airport. So, let's say you are flying, a relatively high-performing single-engine jet, let's say like a Vision jet or something, and you want to go to Bush during a major arrival bank, right? Runway construction, whatever. You may get an edict. Let's say you're departing from Lafayette, Louisiana, going to Houston. Your edict will probably be 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half. Just depends. Whereas if you were departing from Atlanta or New York going to Bush, it may be 15 minutes. You may not even get an edict. The further away you are from the airport, the more time you have to lose in the air. And it's all calculated in this edict computer. It's pretty cool, actually. So they can be like, well, based on your filed true airspeed, based on the winds aloft, based on the runway configuration of the airport that you're departing from, this is how long we think you'll be in the air. And then will you get there in this arrival bank or in the next one? If it's in this one, okay, you may get a little edict that accounts for all that stuff,
And for our audience, edict is expect delay clearance time.
Expect departure clearance time.
Just departure clearance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
EDCT. Acronyms. The FAA loves.
Yeah, I know. But
And be advised, like you can go to NASA, status.
Yeah.
.faa.gov and see all of this, and anybody can go have access to this information.
And if you have an edict, you can edict lookup on there as well, so you could type in your call sign in the route pair, and you can see if you have an edict. Sometimes it's kind of hit or miss. I've been able to see it a few times whenever I've had one, mainly going to like LaGuardia or whatever. But the more important one on there, I believe, is the airport demand charts, and that shows you when those chunks of time that airplanes are being assigned edicts are, right? So if you depart in the morning and you're going to be landing in New York during one of those chunks, you're more likely to have a departure delay.
Which is one of the reasons I originally asked the question, and it's really for the benefit of our audiences, is that I have called up Atlanta TradeCon for a TME report because I wanted to land at Hartsfield in my 182 for my 1000th landing. And I wanted to do that when it was at its least busiest time, especially not during a push. And so I was advised by our friends at Opposing Basis. They gave me a contact there and said, ask for a TMU report and ask them when the best time for a single piston to come in there. That's going to apply all over the country. And if you want to go to a busier airport, but you don't want to be put into a hold or told to hold north of the airfield or whatever, you can call up and get these reports, or you can go to these websites that you're mentioning. Ted, hopefully we put those in the show notes. But so that's the reason I brought it up, is because there is some practical use as a VFR pilot that wants to get into a busier airport. That's the best way to go about doing that. So
also, let's be clear, every one of your friends and your partner's friends that know that you fly think that you are now an expert at everything related to aviation. So they ask you, why was my plane delayed leaving Seattle? I was going to Denver. It's like, well, would you rather be in the air for an extra hour, or would you rather wait on the ground before you leave?
And 9 times out of 10, you can always say it was because there was a cloud in Denver. That's why they were delayed.
Very cool. Ted, do we want to get to some of these questions from the live chat?
Yeah. Let's, I want to hit what Nathan Ballard was saying here. He said, we always hear in the news about how ATC needs badly to be modernized. What specifically would you like to see modernized?
That's tricky, because a lot of the stuff that I'm sure you've heard of next gen, right? By at this point, it's past gen, right? It started in 95. But a lot of those programs are now being rolled out that were being developed back then. And they're now being like, oh, this is part of the modernization now. Like it's been in the works for a long time. Like they just didn't create this. Like to get our parking lot redone, it took 7.5 years. Like these things take time to undo. And that's a parking lot. Now think about AI within air traffic control facilities, right? There's so much vetting that has to go into that, right? The forefront of there's so many risk analyses that are done on any new technology that is incorporated, especially in an air traffic control facility, that the things that are coming out now have been being done for a long time. So as such, in the center especially, we've had some cool stuff that's come out recently. Our radar scopes used to be, square cathode ray radar scopes, and now we basically have like big flat screen TV radar scopes, which are all digital and cool stuff. So that's cool. That happened whenever I was there. I got there in 2019. The radar system itself, ERAM, which is en route automation modernization, has a lot of cool updates just from whenever I've been there. So like they're continually updating all this stuff. So it's hard for me to say, what would I like to see modernized equipment wise in an air traffic facility? Because every time I think of something, they're like, oh, it's already in the pipeline to be done, which is kind of cool. I know a lot of TRACONs just became STARS radar systems, at Standard Terminal Automation Replacement System, STARS, as opposed to, 1980s radar technology. I know Newark just got their new ASDX radar ground thing, which I think is great. It's crazy that they either didn't have one or had an outdated one. You'd think at one of the major core 30 airports, they would have that. But the benefit, I think, of, all these programs were kind of on the back burner in next gen because they ran out of money, or they didn't have funding for it, or you get funding for it and then the government shut down. And so then it takes spool up time to get all this. So the one benefit of, the big, beautiful bill and all this like infrastructure things that the Department of Transportation is pushing is they're now funding all of these things. So they have the stuff. They're just funding it to implement it, right? Which I think, money's good. Money's helpful. The voice switches, the communications is always needed to be better, I think. It's 1940s radio technology that we're using in the center. So my airspace borders the ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, America, and there are frequencies and ADS-B sites on oil rigs in the Gulf. And those are voice over IP, I believe, frequencies, which is really interesting because those were kind of like the first ones, and now they're kind of branching out the rest of the country, right? But it started in the Gulf with the helicopters and all that stuff. But that brings its own challenges because there's a little delay with voice over IP, right? As opposed to an instantaneous radio signal going from point A to point B. So there's pros and cons to all of this stuff. Hopefully it's more pro than con. I would like, big push with voice switches as well right now. What is a voice switch? Well, we have a thing in the center called an VSCS, a voice switching and control system. So many acronyms. And that has our frequencies, and it also has our landline communications on it. And we're getting new VSCS equipment. That's when I say voice switches, that's the new kind of equipment. So towers have their own thing, and they're getting new stuff there too. They're kind of making a unified voice switch for tower and center and TRACON. And I got to play around with it at Communicating for Safety last year, which is like a big safety summit in Vegas. And I got to play around with it. And it's really cool because right now, one of the major frustrations with center and with pilots, I'm sure, is whenever you're on one frequency and the controller is working 3 other frequencies and you can't hear the other frequencies, right?
Right.
So there's a thing that we can do now with our VSCS called cross-coupling, right? But depending on the transmitter site and the whatever, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't allow us. Like my airspace, we can't cross-couple frequencies for some reason. I don't know. It's tech ops wizardry. Some facilities can, but it's finicky, and so they just don't. This new system is supposed to allow cross-coupling a lot easier. And so hopefully that will reduce frustration on pilots from talking over each other, right? Because for those of you who don't know, cross-coupling is basically I'm working 2 frequencies, right? 124.7, 133.8. A pilot checks in on 124.7. That is then retransmitted on 133.8 simultaneously. So a person on 33.8 can hear that person, right? So they're not both talking at the same time. Because if they're both talking at the same time on two separate frequencies, you don't get the beep, 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 blocked sound. But in my ear, so these are the headsets that we use. Note it's single source, right? So I hear both pilots talking in my ear at the same time, which is kind of interesting. But I think that's, one of the cool parts about being a controller too, is you start to pick up like what plane is about to check on, right? I just took this handoff. This plane is probably about to check on. And this plane is also probably about to check on. Okay, cool. So whenever I get two people talking at the same time, I hear like United 8137 and an American. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure it was this American and I'm pretty sure it was this United, so that I can go back and forth. And so whenever you have people sitting next to you, like observing or monitoring, they're like, how did you know? How did you know this? That's who that was. It makes you feel kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then you get the plane in the middle that's like, and we're vacating an altitude. I'm like, who was that? Because you weren't expecting them to talk. Anyway, all that to say, modernization is coming along. There's a lot of risk analysis that has to be done with it, which creates delays. But hopefully some of that red tape is taken and we can get some new voice stuff, especially.
It's funny to me when you hear a pilot being chided for stepping on another call that occurred on a different frequency.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves with controllers specifically.
It's like the only one around that heard that.
They don't know. Yeah.
But when you've flown long enough, you can hear that. That gap in the conversation is elsewhere, and you get the cadence, and you hope that you get your check in after that cadence is done. You don't always get it, but I've worked in tech startups for a million years, and I always talk about the service area of the product or institutional learning, and this is even the dumbest little things like the process to replace the NOTAM server has been ongoing. I don't know if you remember, like a year and a half ago, somebody accidentally deleted the live copy of the database, basically.
Yeah.
And so replacing it, everyone was like, oh, great, we're going to get better NOTAMs. No. This is just to have an API that's modern, that people can talk to.
You're still going to see all of the NOTAMs about the trees.
Right. And this
the birds that are in the vicinity
of the airport.
This is a huge improvement, but you're not going to notice any difference. And yet that stuff still has to happen. All these changes still have to happen to make things better, even though it's not like, oh, the NOTAMs are so beautiful now. It's like, no, there's all that behind the scenes stuff that has to happen.
Yeah, there's so much behind the scenes stuff, and there's work groups, and there's collaborative work groups, and NAC has to approve it, and the FAA has to approve it, and everything is contracted out. So then the contractor has to do it, right? And then the contractor says, well, actually, the contract needs more money because we didn't charge you for this. I'm like, okay, well, let's go from there, But sorry, I'm trying to get my lights a little bit better because it's a little dark in here.
Oh.
Apologies.
Hey, real quick, Ben, unless you had one you wanted to hit real quick, or I've got one ready to go.
Go for it.
Okay, so now, obviously, you are an air traffic controller and a huge aficionado of the nuance of all of these things. But what we haven't talked about yet, something I'm very interested in as a creative, I do a lot of video making. We all have different creative things we do. I think it's fascinating to see. I did not know your background, that you were a magician. And I don't know how that plays into center controlling, but I'm sure it does on some level on a daily basis. But I was just curious about, every project like PropHatCat is something that bubbled probably for a while. And then to decide to do something like that means you're kind of turning a corner creatively, and there's a commitment to doing it. And that's a lot of, that's a step to take, right? And I understand that it's easy for just people to do unboxing videos or gosh, whatever. But when you're doing it as for something as kind of nuanced and particular and important as air traffic control, huge responsibility kind of piece to take on there. That's why I've always been impressed with the opposing bases guys that are all our friends here, is because they're taking that on in some way and managing all of that. We appreciate your disclaimer. You can say it again a million times, but you chose to do something creative, and you do it in such a way that has such a great kind of light spirit about it, and it feels authentic and personal, but also easily dismissed or not understood as being a lot of work to get things to be that tight and that nuanced. And that is the thing that nobody gets about something. I think I observe this when I see you do. I'm like, this, you make it look effortless. And I wonder if it's about your magic background, your off-Broadway background, your musical background, whatever, all the things. But tell us about just sort of the genesis of the creative effort.
Ooh, that's a great question. Yeah, it's it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to make this stuff palatable because it's so dry. It's so dry. And I really try to make it understandable. And I put a time limit on most of my videos of 3 minutes because, like, if I can't explain it in 3 minutes, then I'm trying to explain too much. And coincidentally, the 3 minutes is the mark that Instagram likes, less than 3 minutes to push out to new audiences. So that's kind of the motivation there. Yeah, it's a challenge. The creative process normally starts with I'm sitting and I'm scrolling, doom scrolling, whatever. I see a video about an airplane or somebody asks me a question and I'll start thinking about it. I'm like, okay, would this be a good video? Okay, at the end of the day, what do I want the end result of this video to be? I'm a really big picture person. I can see the end result of a thing. And then I'm not very good at the medium parts to get to that point. But
yeah,
as a controller, that is an important aspect, right? You need to know, okay, I need this airplane to go from here to here. How do I get them there? Okay, turn, climb, descent, right? Boop, here you go. So I get a lot of practice like that at work. That translates to doing this as well. So I have the thing, and really whenever I started doing social media, it's really only been about a year, maybe a little over a year. Last year is really whenever I started posting. And I went to Disney World with one of my friends, and she's kind of a motivational influencer speaker person, Kat. And I told her, I'm really interested in this. I kind of have a passion for explaining air traffic control. I like demystifying things. I like helping pilots understand how air traffic control works so that they're less annoyed or less aggravated whenever they use it. And so I want to be an influencer. And her response to me was like, okay, well, what do you want to influence? I'm like, oh, that's a great question. Because everybody can always be like, I want to be an influencer. I want to be an influencer. Okay, but what do you want?
Skincare tips is the answer.
Yeah.
There.
Skincare tips. Yes. Unboxing videos, things like that. And I was like, wow, that really kind of made a lasting impact. So every video that I make, I'm like, what do I want the person watching this to take away from this, right? My videos are not for everybody, obviously, right? I'm not going to get millions of views on a video. And I kind of accept that. It would be cool, but I accept it. But kind of the one line that I keep going back to is if I can change one pilot's mind or if I can help one pilot be more safe using this system, then I will have done my job, right? And if that safety means, okay, asking questions about why is this procedure this way, or asking questions about how should I check on, right? Opposing bases has their how to get flight following. Like how can I be a better user of this system that I'm already paying for, to be a safer pilot, and vice versa. It helps me as a controller understand what the pilots are going through and understand how, that instruction was confusing. How can I make it better? How can I be less confusing? Is there something that needs to change? A lot of these rules were written in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s. I'm doing kind of on a deep dive right now of airplanes reporting vacating altitudes because I think it's a useless report. in 99% of situations. But as somebody who just got their instrument rating, I'm sure that you have the marvelous VFR acronym memorized. So you go into this, okay, well, why do we say vacating altitude? The earliest reference that I could find is 1942, Civil Aeronautics Association or CAA or whatever. In their guidelines for pilots, it said this is a required report. But at the beginning of that guideline, it says everything in here is recommended and not mandatory by regulation, which is, why are you saying required, but then not saying it's mandatory or anything? But before that, it says because there is no adequate, they didn't know what like surveillance ADS-B stuff was back then, because radar didn't depict your altitude. It didn't depict your call sign. It just, you were just a blip, and the controller would follow along on this little acrylic sheet of your little airplane. If they had that, if they had radar, if they didn't have radar, it was just all in their brain on a big map on the wall, That's when that pilot should report vacating altitude was introduced. 1942. And its genesis is 1938, which is crazy. So then you get to now, and the AIM still has that recommendation. But it's that recommendation because there was no surveillance back then, whenever they created that rule, right? And so I'm kind of probably going to make a little rundown of the marvelous VFR acronym as well, because all these pilots are like, that's required. I'm like, well, technically, what, 183, 183? Is that where you get the required?
Brian's the IGI, so he'll have to do the one.
I'm just,
I don't know, something like that.
smiling and nodding, but not taking any accountability.
No, that's whatever that regulation was. It doesn't specify the marvelous VFR. You get the marvelous VFR from the AIM, which is not regulatory, right?
Non-regulatory.
Yeah. But it's a collection of best practices. It is. But if you're in radar contact, if they know where you are in the center, I know what altitude you're at. I know what altitude I cleared you to because the data block was updated to reflect that. You don't have to say you're leaving the altitude.
So here's what 91
in a pilot's discretion. Yeah.
Here's what 91-183 says that is kind of significant. It's you must report as soon as possible the time and altitude of passing each designated reporting point or the reporting point specified by ATC, except when you're under radar control.
Yeah.
So except for
when you're under radar control.
Yeah.
And
after 1960.
So when you're just kind of freewheeling at IFR, you don't really have to.
No such thing as
Yeah. Now, obviously, if air traffic says, hey, report leaving, okay, you can report leaving. Sure. But that's a very specific thing. Anyway.
It does sound cool. It does sound cool, though.
Yeah.
When you say it. I'm just saying.
But like I said earlier, right, especially in like a descend VO with some of the big airline guys, normally they're in the middle of my airspace. And when an airplane says their call sign and their altitude, I'm looking at the boundaries of my airspace to see if the airplane that I took the handoff on is checking on. And I'm like, who was that? And then it's in the middle of my airspace. I'm like, Roger,
Yeah.
Why are you distracting me here? I'm doing other things, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of back and forth in those discussions as well, which is great because, they're saying things that I may have not thought of and I'm protecting or I'm reasoning my logic behind that as well. But yeah, it's that's one of the cool parts about this, right? About the stuff that I'm making is, yes, it's written down. Most of it is in black and white. Most of it is, this is how the controller is supposed to say this. This is how the pilot is supposed to read it back. This blah, 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 right? But there's so much to learn. You will never know everything about aviation. Whether you're a student pilot with 2 hours or a commercial ATP with 9,000 hours, you will still see new things. And I have pilots in my comments every day saying, I've been an airline pilot for 40 years and I never even thought about that. Or I've always wondered why they've done this. Now that explains it. And that kind of gives me that satisfaction of, wow, I'm actually helping at least get pilots to think about this so that they make maybe better informed decisions or at least be more informed. Whether they act on it or not is up to them, and that's completely up to them, right? But
I'll say on top of that, I've been I've experienced that with and with opposing bases. I've learned, oh, this is why they do that. But it also causes you to start thinking further out. Well, what else can I do to be a better participant in that? So it kind of puts you in the right mindset.
Yeah.
I wanted to hit Mike Goff's question. What's the most common GA readback area you fix? Same as 121 or 135 pilots. And what phraseology do we use that makes you work harder?
So GA, I would say, and I think it's also controllers kind of shooting themselves in the foot, is giving you too much information at once, right? November 123, climb and maintain, flight level 230, fly heading 030. That's a lot. It's a lot of numbers. Now, should you be able to do that? Maybe. But if you're new, if you're, whatever, then you don't want to transpose those numbers and all that stuff, right? So that's kind of a tricky thing. I don't think controllers really understand how difficult frequency changes are. I was able to fly with one of my followers. He flies a Citation out of Fort Lauderdale and Wilmington back and forth, and he let me run the radios in the center. And
the accidental aviator.
Yeah, accidental aviator.
I saw those videos. He does a great job on his YouTube.
And I had no clue how difficult frequency changes are. Because the controller knows the frequencies. We hand these airplanes off 30,000 times a day to this frequency. But that could be the first time you've ever heard that frequency before. And if we just rattle it off, contact Houston Center 123.82 today, it's like, was that for us one? And also, crap, I've already forgot what the frequency was, So that gave me a better understanding and a better, what's the word? Not emotional intelligence, but empathy for pilots and for, taking the moment to be like, okay, contact Houston Center 123.82. It's not a rush. And even reiterating, 2382. In the citation, you just type in the number. The one is already filled. So it's 2382. I'm like, oh, that's so much easier, especially if they say 2382. Now that's easier to remember than 132.9 or 5, 3295. Okay. Bloop, bloop, bloop. There you go. Somebody said, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you think there's probably some sort of spidey sense type of skills that you've got to have in your position where you have to, no matter how busy you are and the nature of or the complexion of all of your targets and who you're talking to can vary a lot, of course, but you've probably got to have a pretty good spidey sense for just hearing tonal qualities or dialects or various things or that like you're probably building a profile of every pilot like sort of instantaneously in the back of your mind a little bit, is to kind of map them out a little bit about like, even if this guy seems totally capable, maybe he's got a long Southern draw, his name is Ben, he's talking a little, slower, or there's other people that just talk too fast and they're trying to prove something, but I would imagine you have this kind of spidey sense sort of psyops that you're sort of doing all the time to kind of profile each person that you're talking to. How do you sort of intuit who you're talking to and how do you adjust?
I will say that you do make that little profile on the initial check on, right? So if it's somebody who checks on and they transpose their call sign, okay, I got to keep an eye on this person, kind of like that initial thing, right? Law of primacy. There's like 3 generic airline pilot male voices and like 2 generic airline pilot female voices. Same thing with controllers. There's like 3 controller voices male, 3 controller voices female. So that means that the pilots who have those very unique accents, so Commute Air, which is United Regional, hire a lot of Australians. And so whenever an Australian checks on, it's probably a Commute Air. And then you're like, oh no, it's a Qantas. Oops. But yeah, so you get that idea and you give them a number 123, climb and maintain, flight level 230, maintain 040 or fly heading 040. All right, up to 230 and 040. Depending on how they read back things as well, that kind of creates that. And you're doing it unintentionally, obviously, right? You're not actively going like, this American needs to pay attention, and this vision jet is going to be really slow, and because you don't have time to do that, you're just doing it in the back of your mind, and once they're off the frequency, you forget about them. They're gone. You're working your airplanes in your airspace, and you make all these little things, and then you ship them to the next frequency because you have new stuff coming on, so you can't think about that, right? And yeah, so it's this. It's good for the controller too because it's a constant scan, right? You're scanning their altitudes, the routes, the whatever, but you're also like, did this person sound like they needed extra time? Did this person sound like they needed help? Does this person sound hypoxic? Does this person sound like they don't really know what they're doing? And that kind of adjusts how you interact with them. A lot of controllers, I think, don't remember that they're in a service industry, right? And how they interact with their users reflects on the service that they're providing, right? And so being able to clue in on, would you rather go to a hotel where the bellhops and all the people there don't even pay attention to you? Or do you want someone there who's like, oh, you need some help? Okay, it's down here to the left.
Right.
There's the elevator, right? It's kind of that idea of, if you need help, we're there to help you. We're not anticipating that you're going to need extra levels of help until you prove it, right? Until you either say, we're declaring an emergency, or, oh, can you say that again, but slower? Okay, yeah, here you go.
I had a good example of that on my flight on Friday. I was flying up to Columbus, Ohio, and Ohio State University Airport was landing 28, and John Glenn International was landing 10. And the controller, the approach controller at Columbus, basically, and this has happened to me a couple of times, but it's that customer service level that you're talking about. He came on and said, 42911, I'm going to take you north of the airport, and then if you can pick it up, we'll do a visual, go ahead and program for the RNAV, and he told me his exact plan.
Yeah.
And that went a long way in me going, well, do I need to program this approach in? Is he going to flip he told me all what I needed. And the conversation, or the transmission, was maybe 7 seconds long.
Yeah.
And that cleared out a bunch of things.
A little clue about what the controller is thinking goes a long way. So I've enacted this in my controlling. So we have an LOA, a letter of agreement with the Houston approach, that the airplanes landing in the North satellite airports have to cross this fix at this altitude, right? That's not published anywhere for pilots. So whenever I start people down, they're always belly aching. Can you make it discretion? I'm at 43, Well, you have 80 miles to get to 11,
right.
But they don't know that, right? So I've made it kind of my SOP whenever they check on, hey, expect Cooper at 11, or expect Weed at 36, or expect whatever. So now they're at least thinking ahead of like, okay, well, this is, as opposed to dumping down last minute,
right,
going to be getting us down a little bit earlier, I guess.
I think that little bit goes a long way.
Yeah.
The slam dunk. We all love the slam dunk. So listen, we're going to try to rapid fire, lightning round some of the stuff to make sure everybody's heard from. But this has been so awesome, Marcus. I can't believe that this hour has already gone by. But listen, our friend Nathan Ballard, he said, what's the best way to make a center controller smile or give them a chuckle when you check on?
It so depends on the controller, if it's like today, I have a video about this, that controllers are always serious and we never make fun of our neighbor controllers, right? Do about it. But like today, somebody checked on and wished my friend a happy birthday who was working next to me. It's not her birthday, but the pilots don't know that. But she just she's like, it's not my birthday, blah, 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 blah. And so then that pilot started all the other pilots on the frequency saying happy birthday, and then all those planes finally got off. And then I was like, number 123, contact Houston Center 132.9 or 5. Wish her a happy birthday. And she's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? I just got all those guys off my frequency. So that, I would say, the less you make us have to think about you makes us smile more, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? That, I think that's the easiest way to say it. If you need something, ask us, of course. That's why we're there. But if you're just flying along, fat, dumb, and happy, that's fine. That makes us happy because we don't have to do anything else with you. It's not a slight smirk. The lack of emotion is probably the better thing.
So is there any reason to say good day? I mean, don't we all want each other to have good days? You don't mind?
Good day, good morning. People, sometimes pilots will check on and like, hey, center, and they're 1, 2, 3, good afternoon. And then they like look at their time and like, oh, sorry, it's still morning. And I'm like, well, I work in a windowless environment. I don't know what time it is. We have Zulu time on our radar scope, so I still don't even know what real time is.
So this is maybe a longer one, but we're trying to get you the fast answer because this stuff's super not easy, right? There's no nuance to this, right? We're just give us the quick version. How did 2 American airlines end up with the same flight number asked by Pac-Man 1385?
So, in my experience of duplicate IDs, it does happen. It happens. And that's primarily because one airplane was delayed and the other airplane departed. So United, American, all these main airlines have like there and back flight numbers. So it's 2482 going and then 2482 coming back. If they're going to a hub, they'll have replacement airplanes. So if the one coming is delayed, they'll just load up the replacement airplane and fly it back. Very rarely do those planes actually meet in the middle, let alone cross paths at minimum separation. That's why this was so interesting. But a lot of people were like, well, why didn't the dispatcher catch it? I've talked to a few dispatchers from a few different airlines, and they were like, if we're on IROPS, which is irregular operations, then the dispatcher will get an alert on their system saying, hey, these 2 airplanes have the same call sign. And then now you'll get 248 Alpha or whatever, as opposed to 2842. They said that if a GDP, a ground delay program, delays the airplane, they won't get that alert. So that kind of fell through the cracks in that regard, which I thought was really interesting. And like, that makes sense. The weird part, though, is you shouldn't be able to have 2 same call signs in the same sector, right? In the same radar facility. That's the weird part. So I don't know if they launched the departure, but then they couldn't like tag up that airplane, or like the radar block didn't correlate. So then the controller typed in something. I don't know. That's where the speculation happens. And I really don't know about that.
The odds of that are pretty fantastic, though. I mean, the fact that they were intersecting at all is, you're probably not going to win the lottery, but you're going to experience things like that, So real quick, Marcus, is there as a final sort of statement on the record with no disclaimers allowed, all disclaimers, what would you, if I'm a student pilot, it's maybe about to take my private pilot check ride, and I'm about to get out there and start doing this on my own, and I'm, certainly a little nervous, about all these things, right? Like flying by myself a lot or far, or, I've done a little bit, maybe talking to HEC, but I did that maybe just on my cross countries, and I just got flight following, and man, that was enough. And at least it was a familiar area, like just to someone that's in that spot, what would you give them in terms of advice on how to sort of, I don't know, keep a curious mindset as opposed to a reticent or apprehensive mindset about HEC?
I'm going to do some shameless self-promotion. They should follow.
And that's what we want you to do.
Instagrams, because that's primarily why I do it. I want to put a face behind the voice, right? We're not these omnipotent beings that are speaking gingerly into your ear. We're humans, just like you, right? And we're there to do a job, which is to keep the airplanes that are participating safe. That's why we're here. Some of us forget that and are jerks, but most of us are not. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to deal with those people. But pilots are lucky. They get to change frequencies. You have to work with those people for the next 40 years, 20 years. So,
yeah, but we have Ted Air on every week.
Stuck with me.
Grass is not always greener, Marcus.
Yeah, somebody said we're humans for now. Yeah. At least in my career, I believe we'll still all be humans.
Yeah.
Like I said, with the risk analysis thing, it'll take forever to get anything done, which is kind of reassuring to my mother who wants me to have a good job for a long time. And so, yeah, shameless self-promotion, follow my stuff. It answers those questions that you may have. It exposes you to things that you may not have experienced before. And I try and answer all the questions that I can. I get inundated with questions. So I try my best. I try my hardest to answer the ones that are at least most commonly asked, or the ones that are like so unique that I'm like, oh, I haven't even thought about that, And so that's what I would recommend. Yeah, we're humans. That's why I wear the propeller hat. We're trying to be very less intimidating than what all these ATC recordings make it sound like we are. Those are there, and yes, those were real, but also those are there for clickbait. That's to get you to click the video. That's to get pilots and controllers to see, oh man, we're all always at friction with each other. No. That's very rare that actually happening. There's 45,000 flights a day, and you see a recording of one or two, maybe in a week that has crazy stuff happen. That's so rare. And, the controllers are all very professional, and they're all doing the job because they want to keep you safe. I like to think of it like if my grandmother was on your plane, I would want to provide that service to that pilot to the best of my ability. And I think all the controllers share that similar mentality.
Yeah, it can be really rewarding when you are on a frequency and you're listening to a controller that is enjoying life and is helping pilots out, and you're just like, this is like this little community we've got going right now. Like, we're only together for a short time, and you just hear everything going on. It's just, I don't know, I like that. So most people know you from Instagram, PropHatCat. You're also on Etsy. You've got all your great cat stickers, which I love.
Yeah, we've got some little cat stickers, and
you just look for PropHatCat on Etsy. What other platforms do you like?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. Now it's X, I guess. I have a Discord. I'm not very up to date on it. Etsy. I think I said Facebook. Yeah, basically all of the big social media platforms, which I really just started Instagram and Facebook this past January. And that's kind of exploded, which has been pretty awesome. But it just is now, okay, I need like a manager of like comments and things like, okay, where did I see that? Was that a Facebook message, or was that a TikTok instant message, or was it this? And like, I have an email as well. You can go to any of those channels, go to my link tree. It has my prophatcat@gmail.com email as well. You can shoot me a message through the link tree, through the email. I'm not on Only Controllers. Although, I don't know how familiar you are. Sorry, one last thing. I don't know how familiar you are
go.
with CPDLC, Controller Pilot Data Link Connection. Your airline pilots will know. But for those of you who don't know, it's basically text messaging for pilots. So if you have an aircraft that's equipped, they can log in and we can give them climbs, descents, turns. We can do free text to them, et cetera, et cetera. But the equipment that you need in your airplane in order to allow that to happen is called fans, FANS. And so I wanted to make an OnlyFans CPDLC shirt. Would have been really funny.
That would be awesome.
Still going to make it, but
it's coming to GA.
Yeah. So it's
that
fun.
was announced at Oshkosh.
It's your area, right?
Yeah, in Houston, they're doing a lot of it. Hooks and Sugarland and I-90. But the guy who basically, I don't want to say invented it, but has been like the main person behind it, his name is Paul Diffenderfer. And he and I went to the same college together. And I met him at a David Wayne Hooks event earlier this year. He was like, hey, we're announcing this thing at Oshkosh if you want to come and do a video about it. Like, okay, cool. So I met him up there and we talked about it. It's a really cool program. Yeah. It's through ForeFlight and Garmin at the moment, mobile clearance delivery, with the anticipation that they're going to expand it beyond those as well. And it's going to have some really cool functionality once it's totally rolled out. And it's going to be easier for controllers. It's going to be easier for pilots.
Everybody's going to win on this
You're not even going to have to call the Memphis Center anymore to get your clearance. You can just, get it on the ground.
Yeah. Hey, so is your friend related to the chef on the Muppets?
The Swedish chef? I don't think so, but he's the nicest person. Oh my God. I mean, that whole team of mobile clearance with the FAA is like 4 people. which is pretty crazy.
Wow.
They're very highly dedicated to.
But you know what? That's kind of what it takes, I think, sometimes to really, Ted, you've spent a lot of time in tech companies, and I have too, and you just see how bureaucracy can really slow things down. But it's sometimes within a bureaucracy you can win if you've got like a sort of a base camp kind of mentality, and then you just go, okay, we're going to get a small team of sort of really flexible, capable people, and we're going to send them, and they're going to go make something happen and bring it back to us, and that's really amazing. I mean, it's really, I think, the beginning of there's a lot of just really, it seems like in the realm of tech that's happening today, it just seems like there's a lot of very achievable modernization that can just be had right now. Let's not try to bite off the whole thing.
Especially with Starlink now that you have internet in your smaller aircraft, like a game changer with functionality and with accessibility as well. It's interesting though, because they're having to retrofit the controller side of this thing. It's basically like an iPad at the flight data computer in the center, because our radar scopes are not connected to internet.
Yeah.
Our ERIDS, our en route information display system, is not connected to the internet. We are off grid for safety reasons. Obviously, you can't hack something on a floppy disk. And so having this kind of new kind of foot in the pool of like technology near the scope is going to be an interesting thing to see how, now that this is working, let's try this and let's try this and let's try this. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to be pretty neat.
Very cool.
I think that it's really cool to see that. And you can see how that just builds on technology that already exists. And it's like, great, we've already got ForeFlight and Garmin Pilot. Let's just add it in there. Let's try bringing this in. And instead of that kind of lowest common denominator of, hopefully you have a radio. I mean, so much of ATC is built on, what if you lose your radio? And so expanding that and moving forward is really cool. Final question, and Ben will take us out. How accurate is Pushing Tin, the movie?
Remarkably, the personalities in Pushing Tin are very accurate. The kind of stereotypical controller attitudes are very, very accurate. The relationships in Pushing Tin are very accurate, or the other part of relationships in Pushing Tin are also very accurate, if I can say that. Yeah, the opening little montage of like them running planes into like the radar stuff obviously is not very accurate, but like the way that you're actually there with your coworkers, working the stuff, doing all the things, like that's super, super accurate, which is pretty cool. That actually was recorded in a Canadian control facility. And it's such a small world, right? Aviation is such a small world. The like ATC liaison for that movie follows me on TikTok.
That's crazy.
Or on Instagram or whatever. So he like was telling me about like the behind the scenes, like how they did this. They went and visited LA Center, and they went and visited in 90, and they went and visited all these other places, and they chose Canada because it was, cheaper to film. And, they weren't actually like going to film in a radar room, obviously, but they like modeled it after that. And like, that's crazy. But like, you never know who you're going to meet on here, like at Oshkosh, especially, you never know who you're going to meet, that I think. Normally I go with our union and I do the pilot outreach thing, and that's kind of what inspired me to start doing this really in earnest. But this year I didn't go with them. I kind of just went as PropHatCat, which is really kind of fun and freeing to just kind of not be beholden to anybody except myself, which is really, really neat. But, just walking around, I had my little propeller hat on, and I had my little homage to the pink shirt on, and the amount of people that would just stop me and be like, "Oh my gosh, PropHatCat, can I get a photo or whatever?" Yeah, sure. And then I'd take a photo with them, and then like a line would form, and like, okay, all right, now here we go. Because I didn't have like any meet and greets or whatever. I can't have sponsors in terms of like aviation companies. I guess Chick-fil-A could have sponsored me, but I can't do like meet PropHatCat at Cirrus or meet PropHatCat at the cheese curd taco. Well, maybe I could do the cheese curd taco place. But I was just walking back from something, and this guy stopped me and like, "Hey, love your videos." I'm like, "Awesome, cool." Like, what do you do? Like, I work for the civilian commemorative Air Force, CAF. oh, that's awesome. Like, what do you do? Oh, I work in their headquarters. And he hands me his card. And he's the president of CAF. And I'm like, oh, you wash my stuff? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you don't just work for CAF. You are CAF. What are we doing here? But yeah, it's just crazy. And like you're saying, to kind of bring it back to the beginning of the conversation is, nobody really is doing air traffic control content like the stuff that I'm doing because they're not dumb enough to do it because it's a lot of work. But also, there's nobody doing it. So there's this whole open market share of this stuff that I can kind of mold to however I want to do it. There's a few other air traffic controllers in the tower and the Tracon, and we bounce each other ideas off each other. And, the command center has a person, and we bounce each other there with command center stuff. But we all kind of stay on our own little lane. And it's such a fine line to make social media stuff with the FAA, especially. I mean, airlines have their own social media policies. The FAA has their social media policy, but basically their big thing is don't defame the FAA and don't erode public confidence in the FAA. And that's not what my stuff is about. That's not what my stuff is for, right? So that's kind of nice, but a lot of controllers sometimes just find the negatives in the job as opposed to the positives. And so it's really easy to harp on the negative. And that's where you can get in trouble with the FAA. So they just decide not to do anything, which is fine, because then that leaves it open for me, which is great. But yeah, it's just kind of an open market share of ATC content. And the people who may not want to make the content will still respond to comments and still be active in that conversation, which is also really helpful because I don't know everything. I don't know how Bush Tower works 98% of the time. I know the very specific situations that people ask me about because then I can, ask somebody who works at the tower, and building those connections to kind of add some authority to what I'm saying, authority to the opinions, right? I think really helps, and it showcases that, wow, maybe he actually does kind of know what he's talking about, because I try really hard to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, listen, this has gone. We appreciate your time. PropHatCat is on Instagram. He's on all the socials. Ted will have links to his feed.
Oh yeah.
Super. It's this short form, bite-sized bits of information to get what happens on the other side of the mic. And we want to thank you for your time, Marcus. It was great to get to know you. It was great meeting you at Oshkosh, and hopefully we can get you back on here at another time.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I also forgot I'm also on YouTube. So
I was going to ask you about that. You've got a YouTube channel now.
Yeah, I'm just branching out onto YouTube. I'm going to start doing a little bit more long form stuff.
Nice.
Excellent.
More of the stuff that I can't make into 3 minutes.
There you go.
Excellent.
I'm going to be playing around with that. So
I want to remind our audience, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. I'm not going to whine about it. We'll get to that in a little bit. Follow us, do all the things. Tonight's bit of wisdom comes to us from the aviation magazine, AV Airspeed, altitude, and brains. You always need at least 2 of these. Signing off, episode 194 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.